Hey everyone, Joey here, and today we're going to be doing a review on the new Mangmi Air Y Pro. The Air Y Pro is Mangmi's latest higher-end vertical device, one of two that they just released, the other being the Air Y. Today's video is going to be all about the Air Y Pro since that's what they sent me, but you might want to check out the Air Y as well if you wanted a lower budget vertical handheld, because they are wildly different prices and different specs too. The Mangmi Air Y starts at just $89.99 during early bird phase, which is August 12th to 15th. The Mangmi Air Y Pro that we're going to be talking about today starts at $145.99 during the early bird phase. This is US dollar pricing. I have the 8GB RAM model here today, and this starts at $175.99. I was hoping to review the lower budget model. In all honesty, I think that is the more interesting of the two, but the one that they sent me is the Air Y Pro, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. I do think the pricing is actually fantastic for the specs and what you get and all of that, with one big caveat that we're going to talk about later, but $90, $160 for what you get spec-wise in a vertical, really good pricing. So they've nailed it on that. The Mangmi Air Y Pro that I have here today uses the same Snapdragon 865 processor that they used in the Pocket Max, as well as what Retroid is used in the 5, the Mini, and the Flip 2. So performance at this point is a known quantity. We've seen several of these devices. Upscaled PlayStation 2 and GameCube and so on are easily achieved, and then there's the bonus systems that are among everything else. So you can get some decent performance with some PC emulation for a lot of games, some decent performance in early emulators like PS3, Xbox, Xbox 360, and so on. But all of those are bonus systems like I mentioned. This really just tops out at PlayStation 2 and GameCube and upscaled for those. I've done a bunch of videos on what the Snapdragon 865 can do in the past, so you might want to check that out for further reference. But again, you want to stick to PlayStation 2 and GameCube, and outside of the normal problem games, this has no problem handling the catalogs easily. Then you have all of the previous retro systems that will work and run just fine, 3DS if you wanted to do that, and all of those types of systems. Performance is good here, that's not a concern. Now on the topic of the 4GB model versus the 8GB model for the Snapdragon 865, I think if you're gonna go with that SKU, you wanna go with the 8GB model. 4GB is a little limited when it comes to the 865. That would just be my suggestion, but it is up to you. I think if you're gonna be going to the 4GB model, you might as well just drop down to the budget vertical model, the Air Y. But again, this is a personal preference thing. I just find 4GB is probably not enough for a lot of things. The Air Y Pro does have active cooling, and it is strictly in the fine category. You have control over what speed you set the fan to, and I stuck to auto or silent, but depending on what you play, you may want more. The hum of the fan is louder than I'd want, but there's no whine, and on extreme mode, it's mostly just the sound of air blowing out, with some mixed in fan noise. I think if you plan to stay in auto, you rarely ever hear the fan. The screen here is the same screen as the one in the Neo Pocket Air Mini, or if not, it is an exact replica of it. It's a 4.2-inch, 1280 by 960 IPS 60Hz screen, but it is on the low end of acceptable screens to me. It is also just slightly under 60Hz proper, which hopefully they can fix, because that does lead to some weird stuttering and frame pacing. On the Neo Pocket Air Mini, it suffered from extreme ghosting. That's not only visible in Android menus or doing ghosting tests, but also in-game. Super Mario World and Tetris are easy test cases to show this, and it shows it immediately for me. Unfortunately, the same screen has the same effects on the Air Y Pro and the Air Y, and that is, or could be considered at least a deal breaker on my end. Now, Mangmi did release an update specifically targeting the ghosting on this device during the review period, but it hasn't done anything, unfortunately. That tells me two things. One, that they're listening, and two, that they're trying, but I don't think this is something that can be fixed over software. This is something that's going to be hardware, and if you want to buy an Air Y or Air Y Pro, ghosting is something you're going to have to live with. Now, ghosting is always person-to-person dependent. Some can't see it, some do and don't care, and so on. As somebody who struggles with the Switch 2 screen for the same reasons, it is something that is a deal breaker to me personally, but it will be up to you on this one. The screen itself does have good colors and contrast and so on, some might say even better than a recent 4x3 OLED handheld, but I just don't think this is an acceptable screen for the price. The Mangmi Brick Pro's screen, while less resolution and a bit smaller at 4-inch, is vastly better and would have been a much better choice here. That is an actually really good screen, and it is a direct competitor to their budget Air Y model, which again has the same screen as the Air Y Pro. We do have full video out here on the Y Pro, which would be a positive over the Y since that processor can't do video out. Except I seem to be stuck at 4:3 and it doesn't want to use the display's aspect ratio, which I'm not sure what exactly is happening here. I can't get full screen. Hopefully something that can be fixed, and yes, you can pair it with a Bluetooth controller when you dock it. You can of course pair it with a Bluetooth controller for docking. Taking a quick tour of the actual handheld, and on the left side we have a programmable button and a power button, but also there's a volume wheel, which is rare. It is clickable as well. You can assign a hotkey to it. It is set to mute by default, or if you hold it, it'll open the buttons expansion page, which is where you can set hotkeys for different buttons. I will say I'm not a lover of the volume wheel. I much prefer just actual 2 buttons, but it is unique. On the top is a USB-C port, headphone jack, SD card slot, and microphone. Right side has the exhaust, and bottom is down-firing speakers, unfortunately. On the back is a very interesting layout of shoulders and triggers. Apparently the Neo Pocket DMG had this layout before, but this is my personal first time experiencing it, and I'm really not a big fan of this. I think you can easily get used to L1 and R1. Those aren't really an issue. It's a bit weird, but you can live with it. L2 and R2 are something I never really want to see again. It's kind of a teeter-totter or a seesaw. You push L2 and it goes down, and then R2 lifts up and vice versa. That being said, it fights you if you need to use both. So if you push L2 down, R2 lifts up, and then you have to use a lot more pressure to push down R2 to get that down, and it doesn't feel good. Even just pushing a simple trigger doesn't feel good. The entire back is really not for me personally. Then we get to the front, and it is a pretty standard vertical device with sticks layout here. I do like the feel of the D-pad. It is a larger, looser D-pad, lots of pivot, but accuracy isn't amazing. Left or right on the D-pad can go up and down as well, which isn't the greatest in something like Pokemon, for example. The buttons themselves are near silent, very nice if you plan to play this quietly, and they have lots of travel and they feel really good to press. They also did something interesting. X and Y are concave, sunk-in type buttons, while A and B are convex, typical bulged out type buttons. It feels really good in the hands with this. I like this. And the sticks will be a person-to-person dependent type thing. I think if you're like me that just doesn't enjoy sticks on a vertical, then there's nothing new here to change your mind, but otherwise they are serviceable. They're in a decent spot and they can work just fine. But I just find that sticks on a vertical don't really work out well for comfort and using them, in my opinion. Overall though, comfort-wise, it's pretty comfy to hold and use. I like the plastic that they used here. It is a soft rubber type, which feels nice in the hands, and I can appreciate that. The trade-off, however, is fingerprints and smudges. The black color will definitely have a lot of this, but even on the retro color here, I can see fingerprints and smudges. That being said, the light has to hit it just right at the right angle, so I don't know if I would consider this to be a real issue at all. But I can see black probably being a problem for fingerprints and smudges. The operating system is Android 13, and as usual, Mangmi has a lot of features in here. The swipe down menu has all of your usual fixings for fan mode and button layout and so on. Holding the M button gets you the side panel where you can adjust performance, fan mode, and a performance overlay, or you can jump to the controller icon to play with a few more settings. They didn't really optimize the panel for this display though, as you can see. Lastly, settings gets you to the handheld settings, where you can adjust a lot more settings if you need to. Something still missing is per app settings like AYN and Retroid devices have. I would love to see that. Unfortunately, Android's data storage is still locked down here like the Pocket Max is. So SyncThing users should be aware of that. This is less of an issue with My Forks of Dolphin and DuckStation and so on, but it is still a concern. Then we get to the battery here, and it is a 5,000 mAh battery. As usual with my tests, I do them properly with a full drain of 100% to 0%, 100% brightness here, 10% audio, and quiet fan mode with the balanced performance preset. For RMSX2 at a 2x upscale, using Dragon Quest VIII as the test game, I saw 3 hours and 2 minutes. I kind of expected better here, and I'm not sure what would be different because the Pocket Max was almost double this result. And so wrapping things up here, the question is, who is the Mangmi Air Y Pro for? And it's a bit difficult of a question to answer. When looking at high-end verticals, you have things like the Ioneo Pocket DMG at over $300, Ioneo Pocket Vert at over $250, Anbernic RG477V at $250 US, and then we have the Mangmi Air Y Pro at $160. I think in a shootout between the Mangmi Air Y and the Anbernic RG477V, the Anbernic will win out most every metric, but it is also $90 more. The more interesting comparison is actually versus the Anbernic RG406V, and while this does have more power than that, I think the 406V may be a better purchase overall when we consider the screen, the controls, and everything. The Air Y, to me, is the more interesting device of the two Mangmi releases, as it has a bit less competition in that price range, and I would love to see a straight up fight between that and the TrimUI Brick Pro. I wish I had that device in my hands, as I think that price range and these specs mesh better than the Air Y Pros do. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is the Mangmi Air Y or Air Y Pro for you? Why or why not? Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to talk all about retro gaming, and hope you all have a good one.